Listen, I want to cover this topic because it's been bothering me for a little bit. Last year, the Washington Post came after us veterans. So there was Lisa Rain, Craig Whitlock, Kaylin Gilbert, three reporters who decided that our wounds, our PTSD, the sleep apnea, and the tinnitus weren't real enough. They called our claims dubious. They said the VA's approval system was too lax. And then Matt Walsh, a podcaster who's never served a single fucking day, decided to pile on. He went after a Special Forces combat veteran for getting disability benefits, calling us freeloaders. Here's what makes this dangerous. Right now, we're losing 17 veterans a day to suicide. 17. In these articles, these podcasters, they make us afraid to ask for help. They make us feel like fraudsters for admitting we're not okay. This is the same mentality as the old days of you went to sick call, you were weak. The Washington Post and Matt Walsh just put that stigma back on us. And you know what? I just learned that Lisa Rain retired or left the Post or got canned last week, whatever it is. But if it was, karma's a bitch. But today I'm going to break down exactly why these attacks are dangerous, why these reporters and podcasters got it so wrong, and why we want to apologize for the wounds that we brought home. So let me get into it. But first, if this is your first time, my channel is Anti-Blue Falcon. My mission is simple. I want to share what I know about your and teach you about your VA claims, disability, discounts, and everything else in between. So if the information here helps you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got a lot to cover today, and I need you to stay until the end because I'm going to explain exactly why these reporters got it so wrong and why it matters to every single one of us. All right. The Washington Post published these hit pieces claiming the VA disability system is broken, not because it denies legitimate claims, but because it approves too many. They looked at data, spreadsheets, approval rates. They saw that more veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan were getting disability ratings than previous generations. They decided that that must mean fraud. They specifically targeted conditions like sleep apnea, tinnitus, and PTSD. And they called them dubious claims, approved by a lax system. They made it sound like we're all sitting around faking injuries to collect a check. Here's what they missed. They didn't look at the war. Iraq and Afghanistan, there was no safe rare area. Every single person who deployed, pretty much, whether they were a mechanic, admin clerk, mailman, truck driver, they were in the kill zone the moment they left the wire. The enemy didn't line up for a firefight. They used IEDs on every road. EFPs, they mortared our bases while we slept. They made every moment a potential death sentence. But the Post didn't care about the context. They just saw numbers going up and assumed we were scamming the system. Now, at a time when we're losing 17 veterans a day to suicide, these articles tell struggling veterans that if they file a claim, they're frauds. This is the same garbage mentality from old days that if you went to sick call, you were weak. The Washington Post just weaponized that stigma and put it on a national newspaper. To me, that's not journalism, that's an attack. So let me educate these clowns on something they clearly don't understand. Why non-infantry troops have deep legitimate trauma. The reporters seem confused about why so many veterans, not just infantry, have PTSD and physical injuries. They don't understand that in Iraq and Afghanistan, there was no front lines. Like I said, if you were a cook, mechanic, whatever it was, you were in a dangerous position. It was a 360-degree threat every time you left the wire. You were in the kill zone. A supply truck driver wasn't hauling gear safely in the rear. That driver was a prime target. Convoys got hit constantly. IEDs didn't care if you were infantry or logistics or a mailman, whatever. They killed everyone the same. IEDs and convoys. The enemy didn't fight us tank on tank. They used improvised explosive devices on roads used by everyone. So support troops faced the constant psychological terror of scanning every piece of trash on the road, knowing it could kill them. You're driving, you see a plastic bag, is it trash or is it a wire to blow your vehicle apart? You make that decision 100 times a day for a year. Your brain's never going to turn off. Even on safe forward operating bases, you took mortar and rocket fire while sleeping, eating, or using the bathroom. There was no safe place to decompress sometimes. You could be brushing your teeth and hear the alarm incoming. You'd hit the deck, go to cover, and wait for the explosion, and then go back to brushing your teeth like nothing happened. That's not normal. That rewires your brain. The consequences that created hypervigilance. Your brain stays in constant state of high alert for 12 to 15 months straight. And some people went on multiple deployments. That's psychological injury. Your nervous system gets rewired. You come home and you can't turn that shit off. That's PTSD. That's the claim the Washington Post calls exaggerated. These reporters likely think of war as infantry versus enemy. They don't understand that in our war, everyone was the enemy's target. The guys fixing trucks, the woman running supply lines, the medic, the admin clerk, all of us lived under the same threat and all of us brought those wounds home. Look, I'm not going to stand here and pretend there's zero fraud in the VA system. There is. I've seen the articles about some new boots getting disability ratings for injuries sustained at boot camp before they even got to their first unit. That's bullshit. And the VA does need to address that. They need to figure out how to handle injuries that happen in training versus injuries from actual service and deployment. But the thing is, those cases are small. They're the exception, not the rule. And my fight isn't about defending fraud. My fight is with the inaccuracy of these Washington Post articles that paint veterans who actually served and fought as fraudsters. There's a huge difference between someone gaming the system and a combat veteran filing a legitimate claim for wounds they brought from the war. These reporters didn't make that distinction. They lumped us all together and called us the entire system lax. That's lazy and it's wrong. Now let's talk about the conditions the Post mocked as minor: sleep apnea and tinnitus. They treated these like we're faking to get a payout. Sleep apnea and burn pits. The Post acts like sleep apnea is just about being overweight. They completely ignore the burn pits. For years, we breathed in burning plastic, jet fuel, rubber, medical waste, human remains. We didn't even know about it. The military burned everything in open air pits, and we lived right next to them. I didn't even know that shit in Taji al-Assad when I was in Iraq. That toxic smoke coated our lungs. Remember, and in Taji, I'd wake up and the ground would be moist. Why? That shit destroyed our respiratory systems. It's not gaming the system to need a CPAP machine to breathe at night after your lungs were filled with toxic ash for a whole fucking year. That's a service-connected injury. Now tinnitus, they call it ringing in the ears, a dubious claim. Try sitting next to a generator running 24/7 for a year. Try being near a blast wave from an IED and try doing that multiple times throughout the weeks, months, and the years. Try firing weapons without proper ear protection because you needed to hear commands in a firefight. That ringing, it's permanent. Try hearing ee all fucking day. It just doesn't stop. You hear it right now while I'm talking to you, probably if you're a vet. And the Post thinks that's not real. The Post complains that veterans pile on benefits, but injuries cascade. If you blew out your knees jumping off trucks in full kit for a year, you can't run anymore. You're gonna gain weight. You develop sleep apnea. It's all interconnected. It all traces back to your service. That's not fraud. That's how the body breaks down after you use it as a weapon system for years. Now, my biggest problem with these reporters is they didn't do the work. They didn't reach out to veterans who served on the battlefield and ask us to explain our side. They didn't talk to the veteran who spent years fighting the VA system just to get recognized for legitimate injuries. They didn't interview Vietnam veterans who went decades without benefits because they didn't know how to navigate the system. And it was only because of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan that made those claims process more accessible and taught them how to apply. And good, they deserve to get the fucking disabilities. These reporters sit behind a desk, looked at data, and wrote a report. That's not investigative journalism. That's lazy. Maybe get off your asses and do the actual legwork. Talk to the people you're writing about. Understand the wars you're critiquing. Don't just pull spreadsheets and assume fraud. They prefer the narrative where wounded military personnel bled out on the battlefield rather than they survived and filed a claim. The VFW posted a political cartoon showing the Washington Post as a firing squad aiming at veterans. That's exactly what this feels like. Instead of asking why the wars broke so many of us, they're asking why we have the audacity to ask for fucking help. We aren't fraudsters. We're survivors of a war that you sent us to, that had no front lines. And we won't apologize for that shit. We won't apologize for the wounds we brought home. Now let me address the invisible war, the one these reporters completely ignored. PTSD and mental health. And I'm a therapist and I'm trying to work on this. This is stuff you can't see. Just because a veteran looks at you and they look okay doesn't mean he is okay. You have no idea what that soldier, marine, sailor, or airman is going through in their mind. The effects of war don't always show up on us as missing limbs or visible scars. It's stress, depression, insomnia, nightmares, hypervigilance, flashbacks, survivor's guilt, memory loss, migraines, so many fucking issues running through a veteran's head every single day. But because you don't see it, you assume that veteran's fine. Let me tell you, they are not fine. A veteran could be standing in front of you, smiling, holding a conversation, doing his fucking job, and inside their brain is replaying the moment their body got hit by an IED. They're hearing the explosions, the yelling, everything. The innocent people getting hurt and killed. They're smelling the burn. They're wondering why they made it home and their friends didn't. That's PTSD. That's the invisible wound you didn't talk about. There's a reason why the suicide numbers are still fucking sky high. 17 veterans a day, every single day. Because the war didn't end when we came home. It's still playing in our heads for the rest of our lives. So when the Washington Post calls PTSD claims dubious, they're telling veterans that their invisible wounds don't count. They're reinforcing the idea that if it's not bleeding, it's not real. And that kills people. That stigma, that shame keeps veterans from getting help. Makes them think maybe I am faking, maybe I'm just weak, and then they don't file the claim. They don't go to therapy. They suffer in silence until they can't take it anymore. That shit pisses me off. And that's what these articles do. They don't just insult us, they kill us silently. And Lisa Rain, if you got laid off last week, whatever it is, or you retired, you know what? Karma's a bitch. You attacked veterans who served, veterans who gave up years of their lives, veterans who missed birthdays, anniversaries. We missed our kids growing up, so that they deployed us to a war zone. Veterans who gave up their youth, their health, and their peace of mind. And you say in your little fucking cubicle and typed up an inaccurate anti-veteran hit piece? I hope this follows you. I hope every future employer Googles your name and sees that you went after the veteran community with lazy, harmful journalism. I hope you find your place out there, but I hope you remember what you did and what it cost. And while we're in the topic of people attacking veterans, let's talk about this piece of shit, Matt Walsh. This podcaster influencer decided to go after a Special Forces combat veteran for getting disability benefits. He insulted veterans for filing claims and made it sound like we're all fucking freeloaders sitting around collecting checks we didn't earn. Matt Walsh has never set a foot on a battlefield, never fucking served. He sits behind a desk and spins stories to fit his narrative. The biggest fight this piece of shit has had in his life is probably spilling coffee on his man tits. But somehow he feels qualified to tell a fucking Green Beret, a guy who actually put his life on the line, that his wounds aren't real enough, that his sacrifices don't count, that asking for the benefits he earned makes him weak or not able to serve in Congress. You know what, Matt? You don't get to do that. You don't get to sit in your little comfortable studio like a little bitch with zero understanding of what war does to a person and lecture veterans about their claims. You didn't earn that, right? You didn't sacrifice anything. And just like the Washington Post, you're contributing to the stigma that keeps veterans from getting help. You're part of the fucking problem, and I hope one day you have the guts to sit down with the veterans you insulted and hear their stories face to face. But I doubt you will, because that would require actual fucking courage. Look, these articles aren't just insulting, they're dangerous at a time suicide rates are sky high in our community. The Washington Post and little fucking Matt Walsh are making veterans afraid to get help. They're reinforcing the stigma that asking for support makes you look weak or a fraud. We can't let that shit stand. So this video helped you understand what's really going on. Do me a favor, share it, send it to another veteran, post it in your vet groups, whatever it is. Let's make sure our side of the story gets told, because the mainstream media and these podcaster pundits clearly aren't going to do it for us. And if you're a veteran struggling right now, if you're debating whether to file a claim because you're worried about being called a fraud, file it anyways. You earned it. You fought hard. Now you get your share. The VA exists because we gave years of our lives in service. Don't let some newspaper article or some piece of shit podcaster shame you out of getting the help you deserve. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell, and remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong, and I'll see you in the next one.